Good morning. My name is Laura Hernandez, and I'd like to speak to you about the California Abortion as First-Degree Murder Initiative. This initiative is currently gathering signatures and support to be able to be presented in the 2018 ballot. This potential law could condemn women, medical professionals, and others as guilty of first-degree murder if they were to terminate a fertilized egg on purpose. They could also be seen as guilty of murder if they conducted many in vitro fertilization procedures and most embryonic stem cell research, along with some types of fetal tissue research. Not to mention that on top of all that, this initiative also expands the definition of abortion to include some forms of birth control. Yeah, think about that for a moment. My proposition is that the initiative will affect women's ability to access important reproductive health resources, such as some methods of birth control and abortions. However, these restrictions are a violation of a person's constitutional and human rights. My first claim on the abortion as murder initiative that we will be seeing is the fact that the initiative is trying to overturn the well-known Roe versus Wade ruling about protecting, preserving, and allowing for a woman's reproductive rights to be no one's but her own. Claim 2 will be further expanding on the problems that can arise for women due to outlawing of abortions and some birth control methods. Lastly, my final claim will explain how this initiative, if passed, will do nothing but fail to solve the problem. Firstly, the initiative would overturn the Roe versus Wade ruling. While it's true that most people identify Roe versus Wade with the right to choose, it also linked privacy to ideas of individual identity and choice. As professor of law at Florida State University, Mary Ziegler proclaimed, civil libertarians, feminists, and supporters of LGBT rights argued that the right to privacy stated in the abortion decision covered other decisions about sexual intimacy. The American Civil Liberties Union used Roe in defending sex workers, gays and lesbians, porn stars, and women cohabiting with their boyfriends. Which brings us to the largest issue with overturning Roe versus Wade, that it would ultimately violate women's and people in general's autonomy along with the right to privacy. This year makes it 45 years ago that the Roe versus Wade ruling was passed and made law. Roe versus Wade assured that women's reproductive rights would be protected, but over the years there still has been those who would wish to see these rights taken away. For this reason, there is a need to push back, to not let anyone opposing this right insert themselves in the woman's most personal and private of health decisions. As Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi stated on the 45th anniversary of Roe v. Wade, on this anniversary sustained by the strength and determination of these brave American women, Democrats renew our vow to stand strong to defend reproductive choice and work toward a comprehensive approach to reproductive health care. Together, we can safeguard a woman's right to choose, and we can reduce the number of unintended pregnancies at home and around the world with critical and affordable family planning services. Democrats will continue to work to build on the legacy of Roe v. Wade and protect the rights of women across the country. Not taking this right for granted and protecting it from those who would wish to impede women from exercising their constitutional rights has never been crucial. Secondly, outlawing both abortion and birth control would be creating more problems for women. Going back to the initiative, these things I mentioned will outlaw would create a huge problem for women if it were to pass. For example, the initiative's petition summary explicitly states that it eliminates a woman's state constitutional privacy right to terminate a pregnancy and to use certain birth control methods. Now, there's multiple issues with this, not just the abortion part of it. Firstly, the initiative doesn't really mention which types of birth control that would become illegal. And even if they were mentioned, the main issue with this is that many women rely on at least one method of birth control in order to avoid unwanted pregnancy. Thirdly, passing this initiative would only fail to solve the problem, which then brings us to a connecting issue. The initiative is not only counterproductive, but would fail at what it's trying to achieve. It's It's honestly very logical. The initiative is trying to prevent abortion from being a common thing, prevent it from increasing. However, as Professor Mary Ziegler commented, in protesting Roe this year, March for Life celebrated a record low abortion rate, proclaiming that love saves lives. California lawmakers introduced a resolution last year describing Roe as the cornerstone of our ability to control their reproductive lives. The decrease in abortion isn't due to the complete total ban of it, but rather can be linked back to a woman's ability to have a choice in the matter that is their reproductive health. Without this choice, it becomes a dangerous territory. It would be stripping them not only of choice and autonomy, as mentioned previously, but potentially putting them in necessarily stressful situations in which they would feel helpless without their voices being heard. It is the highest importance that we keep protecting women's voice and reproductive rights by in turn protecting laws and rulings such as Roe versus Wade, and keep standing against oppressive ones such as the initiative. It will do no one any good if in other words we take one step forward and two steps back. This is the effect of the initiative will have if it passes. It will bring regression instead of progression. In conclusion, restricting women from using certain methods of birth control and from having a choice to terminate a pregnancy not only violates their constitutional rights, but it is a very serious transgression.
Laura, do you have an outline for me? There it is coming. Thank you. All right. Well, the proposition has a couple of dependent clauses in it that makes it a little bit awkward because you're talking not just about the one initiative, but also you're talking about issues concerning the right to choose and Roe versus Wade, and that they all seem to kind of get mixed up in the proposition. You need a simpler statement of the point. You could argue that this abortion as first-degree murder amendment or an initiative has substantial drawbacks, or it creates a severe threat to the right to choose, or will result in political turmoil or something along those lines. Still be able to make the same argument, but keep the claim relatively simple and straightforward. I do think we need a little bit more context on the initiative. You do refer at one point to some things that the initiative mentions, restrictions on some kinds of abortions or any kind of abortion. I don't know what the prohibition is going to be with the initiative. And you yourself say one of the problems is that it's also unclear as to what the forms of birth control would be that would be regulated under that. I think we need to know a little bit more about this particular initiative, because this is the thing that you are, it's the focus of your argument that this sort of thing would be problematic. I think that we run into an issue here that, a California initiative cannot change a Supreme Court ruling. So the question becomes, what is the initiative attempting to accomplish that could legally stand up And that's, I think, what I need to know a little bit more about. We can't just pass an initiative that says no Roe versus Wade here, but Roe versus Wade does give the states the ability to regulate abortions in some way. And your argument is that this initiative would exceed the state's authority. That would make it problematic. Or if it doesn't exceed the state's authority, and we could potentially do this, that it would have some harmful consequence to us. And that, I think, is another way to maybe narrow down the claim and focus a little bit. You do have a preview of what the supporting points are going to be. I appreciated that, although it seemed to me like you had actually started the argument when you got to that, and I kind of put it in a different place. But then it turned out that it was a preview, so I appreciated that. The connection to right to privacy laws, or the concept at the beginning, that whole first point seems to be about if we lose Roe versus Wade, that it would be a threat to right to privacy and other constitutional provisions. Again, if this is a California initiative, it would only affect California, and I'm not exactly sure that any of the things that people vote on here are going to have that effect. So how big a threat this is, I don't know. Also, since it's something that apparently is only being circulated now, it's not even clear that it's going to make the ballot yet. I think that there might be some elements of this argument that are a bit premature, because the idea that it's going to get put on the ballot in the fall. I think we need to know how likely those signatures are. If there's any progress on that, that would be helpful for us to know, and that would give us a little bit more context on the argument. It actually turns into a more general argument about Roe versus Wade and abortion and issues concerning reproductive choices and access to birth control issues. And you can see that it becomes a more general statement about that by the quote that comes from Nancy Pelosi that really talks about it as a defining characteristic of a political party more than anything else. And I'm going, well, this seems like it's kind of a different tact that we're taking, and it's a more general argument on the issue. If you want to make a more general argument on the issue, let's get rid of this California abortion as first-degree murder initiative, and let's just talk about the more general concept there. I think that would probably work better and reduce the confusion that's going on there. There was one point where I thought there was kind of an interesting conclusion that is being arrived at, that the professor that you cite, I assume they're a law professor, cites, that says it's actually access to abortion that is actually reduced abortion. And I thought that was an interesting point. I don't exactly understand how they reached that conclusion. It's based on the notion that the Right to Life movement is celebrating fewer abortions than the previous years. And the professor has some explanation about how that's really because we have laws that allow abortions. I think that explanation needs to be a lot clearer. I think there's a good argument to be made that says when women have access to greater choice in their birth control, that's going to have that particular effect. Maybe that's the line of reasoning that the professor is using there, but that I think needs to be developed a little bit more. Presentation issues are very problematic because it affects your credibility. You never look at the audience. You constantly read, and I've got to be honest with you, sometimes it sounded like you were getting quieter and quieter as you were speaking. And I know, look, public speaking, a lot of people have anxiety issues with that. And but the way to deal with it is to work on yourself a little bit, not hide your argument. And it sounds like this is an argument. You want to be forceful about it. I don't think that you need to scream at people, but we have to hear what you're talking about. And sometimes it's hard to hear what you're saying because, especially when all you're doing at times is reading, and it all runs together. The quieter it gets, the harder it is for it to be distinct. What's my evidence? What's my claim? What's the point that I'm making? And that's where you hurt yourself from a presentation point of view. You need to be able to stand up and tell us the claims. Look at us. When you have to look down for information, that's one thing. I understand that. I don't expect people to memorize everything that they're going to be saying. But your ethos is affected by the way you present, and that's part of the argumentative process, so you're going to have to work on those skills a little bit. All right, thank you. Oh, apparently we have more. Well, wait a second. First, before we proceed, do you have a copy of the final draft of your outline that I can give somebody who's supposed to be doing a refutation speech? Okay. And second, do you, is there anybody who still needs an outline to respond to? There you go. And I noticed that there's no bibliography attached to that, so that's going to make your life a little bit miserable and problematic. Apparently he's going to take care of that at some other point, and I'm not going to have to worry about it until I give him a grade.
Hello, my name is Omar, and